So, Skrulls are the bad guys, and you're a Kree, a race of noble warriors?
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
We found you. With no memory, you were reborn.
I keep having these memories. Something in my past is the key to all of this.
You know how to fly this thing?
We'll see.
That's a yes or no question.
Yes.
Would you like to know what you really are?
You've come a long way, but you're not as strong as you think.
I'm not gonna fight your war. I'm gonna end it.
That was a snippet of the trailer for Captain Marvel, the 21st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is the Middle Seats podcast presented by no sponsor. I'm Andrew Auger. I'm joined by Jake Hensler and Nate Lungarini. This is our Captain Marvel review, which of course was released to gangbusters at the box office. A top 5 opening all time worldwide, which is the crazier part to me. But makes sense because we're only a couple weeks away from Avengers Endgame, which will be the 22nd film, and part 2 of course, the big Avengers Infinity War. And Captain Marvel will play a big role in that. But first, we got to get to know Captain Marvel. Directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, who, of course, are known for indie films, nothing really huge. Their biggest one is the Ryan Gosling-led Half Nelson, which is a pretty solid flick. Came out in the mid-2000s. Brie Larson is Carol Danvers / Captain Marvel. It takes place in the 1990s. She doesn't really know much about her identity when we meet her. She's a part of this elite military group of the Kree, which are kind of these like space officers. We don't really get a sense of what they are, but it's like alien officers, and they fight mainly the Skrulls, which are these shape-shifting aliens that are apparently causing havoc throughout the galaxy. Carol's journey takes her to Earth, where she meets a young Nick Fury, played by a much younger-looking Samuel Jackson with the powers of CGI. And they go on kind of this buddy cop adventure mission. So obviously there's a lot riding on this movie because of its timing before Avengers Endgame, and just the fact that it's the first female-led MCU film, which apparently has a lot of people mad, but we're not going to go too much into the politics of the whole thing. We're just going to talk about the movie itself. How is Captain Marvel? Where does it fit in the pantheon of Marvel's Cinematic Universe films? Let's start with Jake. What did you think preliminarily of Captain Marvel?
It's a solid movie. It does a lot of things right. It's a little formulaic at times, but overall it does just a lot of good stuff. It's a feel-good movie. It's a good origin story. It's got a good character arc, a lot of growth, a lot of fun. There's some good comedy between Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson. It's got the a very similar Marvel feel to it, and anybody who's disliking it probably doesn't have a very good reason, because it's fun. Brie Larson's good. Samuel L. Jackson's good. Ben Mendelsohn's good. Jude Law's pretty good. I think his character could be better. But overall, it's another rock-solid entry in the MCU. It's not quite up there with the best Captain Americas or Iron Man 1 or the Avengers or even Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther. It's not top tier. It's not even in my top 10. I'd say it's middle pack. That's still really good for Marvel. And the only other reason I can think people hating on it, and the reason I'm touching on that is because people are hating on it, is maybe where we were spoiled with movies like Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, Civil War, and this is just another rock-solid entry instead of blowing us out of the water. But that being said, it's a solid movie, and it doesn't really do anything overly wrong, in my opinion.
Nate, what do you think?
I thought Captain Marvel was overall fine. I was a little disappointed, partially because of what Jake just said. We've been kind of spoiled by some really good Marvel superhero movies lately. And obviously, we're all very excited for Avengers Endgame. The fact that this is coming out so close to it is such a weird decision on Marvel's part. But with all that hype going into Infinity War, this felt like such a weird sidestep. It felt like kind of like a filler episode in the middle of a really good binge on Netflix or something. The story's fine. It's not what I was excited for. Now, trying to take in isolation, and it's kind of hard to do at this point just because we've had over 20 Marvel movies now. But it's a solid movie. I think all the actors do very well. I loved Samuel L. Jackson in this. It's been a while since we've had him as a main character, but he is decidedly so in this movie. And it pays off because he's awesome. He's really, really fun. Brie Larson is kind of hit or miss for me. I think she does fine, and I think she's acted fine. I think the character herself just needed something more. I feel like all the best Marvel heroes have some sort of flaw that they have to overcome, and she doesn't have as strong as an arc as, say, an Iron Man or a Thor. It's still solid. It's still good Marvel writing, just not their strongest work. And I think that's just kind of where I fall in this movie. It was solidly done. It's a good addition to the cast, but it is not a standout movie in my opinion.
Right, and it's tough to grade it. It's a mixture of a phase 1 and phase 2 movie. Jake, you're right. It kind of suffers from the comparisons of recent films because they were on a roll. The Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers, Infinity War trio, that's like 3 of my top 6 Marvel movies right next to each other. Boy, were they on a roll here. And Captain Marvel is a step back from that. It's honestly probably towards my bottom 5 in Marvel movies. However, it's a fun, entertaining movie. The one it kept reminding me of a lot was the original Thor. I felt like it was sloppy at the beginning with a lot of the stuff it was trying to do, but once they get her down to earth and there's a lot of fish out of water stuff and there's some momentum forward with her story. Because the big thing with Captain Marvel herself, kind of the thing it struggles with the most, is that she doesn't even know who she is most of the time. So how are we supposed to care about her if she doesn't even really know what her roots are? That's a tough storyline to kind of balance, especially when you do like amnesia stuff like this. And there are movies that have done it before, like Nate, I know one of your favorites of all time is Memento, and that's built completely around amnesia, but you're still so invested. But it becomes really hard to invest in a Marvel protagonist that doesn't exactly have a full sense of who she is herself. And that doesn't come until later in the adventure, and that's the parts that are most enjoyable to me. And I think that's kind of what Brie Larson struggles with as well, too. She doesn't really know who this character is until later in the movie. So when we first meet her, it's just kind of a mishmash of stuff. And it's relying on characters like Samuel L. Jackson and the comedy and that adorable cat, and then hoping that Captain Marvel herself will catch up. And that's not a good way to do things. And Marvel always has been about making the hero's definitive qualities very clear first, and then figuring everything else later. Here, it's kind of the inverse. The side characters and the antagonists kind of drive the action and have all the interesting stuff. I found all the stuff with the complicated politics of the Kree and Skrull world much more interesting than how Captain Marvel herself fit into it.
Yeah, I agree. It was so exposition heavy at the beginning, and it took so long to get the ball rolling. Brie Larson and the audience kind of following along in her boots, not sure who the character is, just has things constantly explained to her the entire movie. And that's never been a compelling way to make a film. You don't want people just telling you the story. You want to feel the story. You want to experience it as it happens. And just the nature of a flashback heavy, amnesia heavy storyline makes that really hard to pull off. And I don't think they did enough to support that kind of movie for this.
Interesting. It sounds like I'm a bit of a high man. Agreed with the first 20-25 minutes before she crash lands on Earth. I was a little bit nervous. I was like, I am not overly enjoying this movie. It's very generic. It's a little bland. It's not exactly exciting.
It felt like a TV movie. I thought we were in trouble.
Yeah, I was kind of nervous for the first 20-25 minutes. But it definitely picks up a lot when she gets to Earth. Her chemistry with Nick Fury, I think, is very good. You're right. Finding her identity may have been a bit of a struggle in terms of like a writing process because we don't know how to identify with her either. But at the same time, I think she does have some traits. She's very bold right from the start. She's a little unpredictable with her photon cannon things. Like, she relies on them a lot. I was still able to go with her and kind of get and follow her arc. And then I think it helps that she's finding her journey with Nick Fury the whole time. I think that really helped and made me engaged.
The movie's more interesting when she has people to play off that are interesting. Like, I found a lot of the scenes with her and Jude Law, like, pretty flat overall because he's a big enigma, too. But when she's interacting with Samuel L. Jackson, Lashana Lynch, who does a really great job, I think she's an awesome counterpart and kind of a better sidekick than Jude Law ever is in the film. And when she's interacting with the main opposition, I think Ben Mendelsohn, as far as performances go, is the MVP of this movie. He's the leader of the Skrulls. It's another really good Marvel antagonist. They're on a roll with those. I thought even the Ant-Man and the Wasp antagonist was really interesting. And
Right, they're trying.
Better than Dark Elves.
Exactly. But at the same time, their formula is still in place. Like, it feels like this movie would go right next to Iron Man or Thor or even Ant-Man.
As far as Brie Larson goes, generally I liked her. There were times where I didn't think she was great, and I think I pinpointed it a little bit. So Marvel's very, very known for being upbeat and fun and characters playing off each other and quips. I think she lacks comedic timing.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there are points where there's something written or played out, clearly meant to be funny, and I just kind of sat there like, that didn't stick at all.
Mm-hmm. I think she has good comedic timing in terms of like the slapstick or her body language. One scene that really stuck out to me, and it's a really minor one, but she's reading a newspaper and somebody's trying to talk to her, and she like flicks the newspaper down, stares at the guy, and flicks back up, completely impatient with him.
Yeah, I remember that.
And no words said, but it's funny, and her body acting is great there. But it's her quips, it's her one-liners that never really landed for me.
Right, her Marvel formula needs work.
Right. It also might go back to the directors a little bit, because I'm thinking back to who she has worked with in the past. She is very good in Scott Pilgrim, and that's Edgar Wright.
That's true.
She's very good in 21 Jump Street, and that's Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Forgot about that.
So she's been in comedies before and been funny in comedies. And I don't mean to put this on Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. They're indie directors being asked to do a lot. And I think overall they do a pretty admirable job. But there are moments that they are clearly more invested and more interested and much better at little character interactions, little dramatic moments. And that's where the movie really is great. The problem is when they have to work with comedy like that and when they have to direct action. Because all of the action scenes look like they were shot in like a place where the electricity bill is running out. It's almost impossible to follow some of this, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, I actually, that was going to be my last kind of qualm with the movie also. There's no standout action scene like there are in a lot of Marvel movies nowadays. Even if they're not great action scenes, there's still ones that you remember and go, wow. In Captain Marvel, there's only really one or two that I was like, that was really cool. We're kind of lacking some serious action scenes in a superhero movie, which is definitely a bit of a problem.
Flashback to my thoughts in the Aquaman review, where we have a superpowered person, but their superpower on display ends up mostly just being punching people, or in this case, occasionally shooting a laser out of her hands. Marvel has excelled at using its powers in creative ways. It does not show here, especially in a lot of the fight scenes that occur in hallways or spaceships or spaceship hallways. It's all just punching, kicking, shooting a laser beam every now and then.
Right.
And it's lots and lots of cuts. This is coming from the same studio that had some awesome choreographed fight scenes in Captain America movies. Black Panther had some really cool ones too.
Thor Ragnarok had a good couple fight scenes.
This was cut. Like, not quite Taken 3 level bad. Like, that's the gold standard of what not to do. But there are definitely a lot of moments where they're cutting between two different players in the action, like Brie Larson in one hallway and Samuel L. Jackson in another. And I don't know where they are in relation to each other, because it's just a generic dark hallway.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with you about the usage of her powers. I think there's a story reason for it that I want to get into in a little while. We've only seen part of what they can do with her, but I think it's partially because the directors were uncomfortable and partially because they were kind of doing it on purpose, but we can get into that more in a bit. I think we should probably start pivoting towards spoilers. There's only so much you can say because I want to keep as much of the story as a mystery as possible.
Right.
So let's get into our ratings here first. If you're just joining us for the first time, which is very possible, the Middle Seats, we rate movies on a seat scale. If it's a movie we think has pretty much no flaws at all, cinema's highest standards, we give it a royal throne. If it's a movie that's really, really solid, has a couple of minor things that we would change about it, but we still really love it, we give it a plush recliner. If it's a movie with some significant flaws that kind of affect the viewing experience, but we still enjoyed it, we give it a wooden seat. If it's a movie that has a lot of flaws, but there are a couple things to save it from complete damnation, we give it a damp lawn chair. And if it's a movie that belongs where the kid in Slumdog Millionaire falls, we give it a sleazy outhouse. And if it's a movie we think is worth seeing in theaters, we give it a little popcorn moniker. We can put it right next to the little rating, just picture that. So let's start with you, Nate. What would be your rating for Captain Marvel?
Alrighty, I'm gonna go middle of the road here with a wooden seat. It's still got the standard Marvel quality. It's still funny, it's still action-packed, has good performances, and it has a unique story. I will give it that. There were definitely intentional twists that I did not expect, and that made for a compelling story. But as a whole, it just felt flat where it should have excelled, and I wanted a more creative use of this brand new character that we've never met before, or at least done in a more compelling way. I definitely did not hate it. I just wished I could have loved it more, and that's why I'm going to go middle of the road. In terms of a bag of popcorn moniker, I don't think this is one that you absolutely need to see in theaters. There's definitely some cool sci-fi stuff that you're going to enjoy seeing on a big screen, but it's something that you could watch at home if you felt like it. That said, you better go see this in theaters if you want to be caught up for Endgame.
Yeah, what the
so
hell?
This is your homework. You're not going to have time to get it on DVR, or on demand, rather.
Or VHS.
Before Endgame comes out. Or VHS.
Unless the process accelerates amazingly in the next couple of weeks. Jake, what'd you think?
I'm kind of in a bit of a middle place between two ratings. I'm going to say low plus recliner. And I would say like a small bag of popcorn. I'm even changing that now.
So indecisive. We're getting sizes.
What does that mean?
Changing the sizes. Because generally I think you should see it in theaters, but I agree with Nate, if you missed it in theaters and there was no Avengers Endgame on the horizon, it wouldn't be the end of the world if you missed it in theaters. But with Avengers coming out soon, and it's a Marvel movie, and it still visually looks overall pretty good, and it's a crowd pleaser, I would say see it in theaters with bag of popcorn. It's still fun. It's certainly got its flaws. It's by no means a perfect movie. So low end plus recliner.
I think we're straddling the same point, Jake, but I'm going to end up on the other side. I'm going to give it a very cosmic, very beautifully looking wooden seat.
That drives Nate crazy.
I know it does. But does he make a chart of our reviews? I don't know what to tell him.
I need a numeric value.
I'll give you this numeric value. Out of the 21 Marvel movies, it's probably number 17 or 18, to be completely frank. But I just so enjoy the 16 or 17 before it that is not a knock on this movie at all. I think it is relatively entertaining. If this had come out in 2002, it might be everybody's favorite superhero movie ever. But our standards have just changed so much for the genre that just merely good is not really good enough anymore, especially with a movie that had so much to do here. It has to tie in the past, the present, and the future of the MCU all together. It has to set up a freaking alien war. It has to introduce us to possibly the front person for the next phase of Avengers. I mean, they want that to happen. So this movie was important.
Right.
And it delivers on expectations, nothing more, nothing less, really. So I would recommend it. Bag of popcorn-wise, that's tough. Because, like I said, it doesn't look great visually, and it might benefit from you being able to turn the brightness up on your TV at home. But I still think you probably get more out of it with a crowd and get to laugh at the jokes together. So I'll give it the bag of popcorn moniker. So 2 wooden seats and a very tentative plush recliner. That'll do it for our non-spoiler review of Captain Marvel. If you have seen the movie, which a lot of you already have, please join us in our spoiler section. If not, you should duck out now. Let's go into Captain Marvel's spoilers.
Whoa! Oh, spoiler alert!
Spoiler! Spoiler! Excuse me! Spoiler alert!
So guys, I think as we all predicted, the big moment from the trailer where she's messing up all the warships, which we actually know to be Kree warships, not Skrull ones like we might have assumed they were, that was the big action moment for me. That was probably my favorite moment. And that comes at a very important point in the movie, because at that point she has realized her full potential as a hero. And kind of what I was alluding to before is that as bad as and annoying as the mystery of Carol's identity comes when attaching to the character, I think it works with how she's just very repetitive with her powers in the first 2/3. She's clearly someone that has this gift but doesn't know how to use it because she doesn't really even understand why she has it. But the ending, and I think the really most powerful part of the movie is that montage getting back up after falling throughout her life. I thought that was a really powerful editing moment, and that was the moment she became Captain Marvel to me, where she has no one to answer to. She's unshackled, she's reborn, and there you can see the full extent of what she's capable of. And it's honestly terrifying for Thanos, at least.
The nerd in me was very happy to find out that we have another child of an Infinity Stone here, following in the footsteps of someone on Vision, Scarlet Witch level or power.
Yeah,
so
that was a nice touch.
And it's a space stone, so it makes sense that she has light speed. My inner nerd was really happy with that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I think the weird thing here, and this isn't even really meant to be a criticism or complaint, but it just was kind of odd from a storytelling perspective. If you want to say like her character flaw, like all Marvel characters have a character flaw, was that she was a little too rash. Doctor Strange, Tony Stark, Thor, they're all cocky and that gets them into trouble. And that's often their own personal antagonist in their respective movies.
Right, and on the flip side, Captain America is like too naive for a while.
Exactly, yeah. So everyone has a flaw and they need to overcome their flaw or find ways around that flaw to win in the end of the day. What's kind of weird for Captain Marvel is that she's rash at the beginning of the movie and she's rewarded for being so in order to win at the end. Like, she's unshackled and now she gets to be full rash and then destroy warships at light speed. Again, that isn't really meant as a complaint. It was just something that stuck out to me as like, that's a little different. And I don't know if it's as emotionally powerful as some other superhero origin stories.
Right. I see what you're saying, but her ideals have changed as a hero, I think. When she finds out exactly what we find out about the Skrulls, which was a nice reversal, by the way, them being able to turn around the whole, the Skrulls are the obvious bad guys, when it's really the Kree that are doing a lot of the persecuting.
Yeah.
Her worldview has changed, and she'll be more responsible with her powers. She's going full unbridled there because...
She has to. She needs to blow up all the ships.
Exactly.
It totally makes sense.
I think, you do see a shift in her character. She's not just this mercenary anymore. She's someone that's actually looking to change the world.
Yeah, she's a leader instead of a trooper.
Right. That's a really good way to put it.
Sure.
I remember thinking after the movie ended, okay, she's clearly powerful and can take on pretty much anybody, but I'm not quite convinced that she's the most powerful Avenger. I think Thor and Scarlet Witch and maybe, one or two others can still give her a run for her money.
I have a prediction for Endgame as far as that goes. They're going to do something early where she shows, how powerful she is. She bitch slaps Thor or something.
Yeah, I'm assuming something happens.
She's in a vacuum right now. We really don't know how she compares.
They have to find a way to humble her at some point, but right now is not the time for that. That's not what the point of this movie is.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, to take a complete 180 on, powers and action, I very much enjoyed that she's just her own person. There's no love interest going on. She's got a friend in Fury, but there's no love interest to kind of help carry her. She's doing her own thing. She's on her own journey. She's finding her own path. It's very much the strong, independent woman who don't need no man.
Better than Wonder Woman in that regard. Because Wonder Woman's origin story is her running off with a man, damn it.
Yeah, I think Captain Marvel, I was very happy to see that she didn't have a thing with Jude Law. She didn't have a thing with Nick Fury. There was no guy that came in. She was just like, I'm going to mess whoever up, and I don't need a guy to help.
And that's what Brie Larson, I think, was talking about. I mean, she drew a lot of controversy for this, but that was one of the main things she was talking about when she was calling this a feminist picture. It's just about her. It's not about her dependence on anybody else other than, figuring out the clues of her life. It's dependence in a story-driven way, not a romantic way.
And that scene when she totally blasts Jude Law's character is awesome. My whole theater erupted at the finale there because everyone was like, you aren't going to let him talk to you like that, right? And she totally proved us right. It was great.
Jude Law's trying to bait her. You were never able to beat me hand-to-hand. Prove to me. She's like, I don't have to do anything.
I kind of figured that's what they were doing just based on the whole Indiana Jones formula. You know what I mean? It was that moment again where he shoots the guy with the sword.
Nice comparison.
It wasn't terribly unexpected, but it was still awesome when it happened. You live for those kind of moments in movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, great moment. That's some of the stuff that I feel like I know where their flaws are, but I feel like they pull off a lot of other things really well. So I kind of leaned more positive.
So let's actually talk about some other things that we liked. I adored Samuel L. Jackson here. I thought he was absolutely perfect in his role, and the de-aging stuff that they did on him was insanely good.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
We've seen CG alter people's faces, but this literally just looked like a younger Samuel L. Jackson. I couldn't notice the CGI at all, which is amazing.
And Glass came out 2 months ago.
Right. That's the thing that's crazy, is that we just had a comparison of what he looks like old.
Yeah. But even as a character, having like the fish out of water situation while he was technically the tour guide being on Earth was just a really cool dynamic for me, because he was just constantly being thrown all this new information and had to roll with the punches. And he did it with that classic swagger that just makes him so iconic as an actor and made Fury all the more compelling in the movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. This has been another huge point of contention. How do you think about having the cat be the one to take out his eye?
I'm kind of torn. I always thought it would be something like super badass, but at the same time, it is kind of a badass cat, and it's funny.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
They have like that one little gag toward the beginning of the movie where his eye gets injured in the car crash.
Yeah.
And I almost wish that they expanded on that a little bit more. Like had 2, maybe 3 more points throughout the movie where his eye almost gets cut off or something like that. So we're waiting for it. And then it can be the cat. And then that's like a fun little comedic tie-in. I feel like that was a little bit of a missed opportunity on the screenwriting's part there. But overall, I have no issue with it.
Yeah, I liked it, to be completely honest, because it reminded me, and not to trigger Nate again, but it reminded me of the whole Last Jedi decisions where they just were like, oh, who is Snoke? Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, who really cares about what happened to his eye? We don't want the backstory to everything.
An eye is a lot different than a whole character.
Yeah. I really do feel like Ben Mendelsohn is the big acting MVP here. Just the amount of heart, sympathy he makes for the Talos character behind all of that makeup too. Yeah. It just takes a really tremendously talented actor to do that, and he continues to show how talented he is. Don't really know why he didn't drop the Australian accent. Whatever, that's a minor thing.
Well, it's funny. He's a villain in like every movie, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, he's a little typecast.
He starts off as the villain, and it turns out they spin his story where he's more of just a victim trying to fight for his own people, and he pulls that off really well.
And even this movie as a whole, I was not expecting a twist of that nature in an origin movie of all things, especially one that needed to fit so much lore and Avengers stuff in here. Right. So to introduce basically from scratch, like we've gotten hints at it from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but basically from scratch, the Krees and the Skrulls, and then for us to get on their side and then M. Night Shyamalan us there was definitely unexpected. It could have wowed me more, but not every movie's going to be able to pull that off.
And like I was saying, the movie does a really good job at balancing all of the different MCU elements. Like, it kind of sets up Ronan the Accuser, of course, the big baddie from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Who's still kind of a bitch, but...
I kind of wish he wasn't in this movie. He looked so bad without the black eyeliner on him, you know? He looked like a baby
Yeah, he
face.
looked kind of goofy.
He's not supposed to be like a radical yet, you know what I mean? He's just a commander.
Like, I get why, but still, I wish he did something with his makeup, because he looked like he just dipped his face in chalk. Like, I could get the same effect if you give me enough time and a wet afternoon.
But then they also have Djimon Hounsou's character with Jake. Do you want to out yourself here?
Yeah.
On that?
Embarrassingly so. I did not connect that Djimon Hounsou is a pawn of Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy. So when he shows up here, I was like, wow, they're really just going to cast him in like the same exact universe, huh? And I was like, wow, there's really no effort to hide him at all.
Yeah, I'm texting Jake after the movie, and I'm like, wow, they connected that really well. He's like, wait, that's the same character?
Yeah, I was like, I can't believe I didn't see that.
Oh, no.
Free pass to just rip on me as much as you want, because I should have seen that.
So let's talk post-credits, and then I think start to wrap up.
Yeah,
here.
definitely.
Yes.
So the Avengers somehow have found the pager, but it turns off. They try to turn it back on, and then they just turn around. She's behind them, like Drax, standing very still. I thought it was a good scene. Well done.
Instead of saying Captain Marvel will return in Endgame, they actually showed her returning in Endgame.
Right.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
I'm assuming that scene is in the movie.
Yeah, I think that'll be a direct scene, or at least a variation of that scene. I was honestly, by the time the credits started rolling, more excited for the post-credit scene than I was when I first sat in the theater originally to watch the movie.
Right. I think a lot of people were, to be honest.
I still saw people leaving the theaters right after it ended. Are we new? Have we been hiding?
I don't understand why
Do
people
we not
don't
learn?
understand. Yeah.
You are missing things in these movies when you leave before the credits.
They even do you a favor by having a mid-credit scene, so you don't have to stay for the entire thing if you...
Right, they've made the important one the mid-credit scene now. That used to be the reverse.
Right.
I do have timeline questions about that, because it looks like in all the Endgame trailers, Captain America has shaved his beard, which kind of implies that it's been at least a couple of weeks, but he's still got his beard in this scene. So does this take place right after Infinity War, like hours after Infinity War?
Maybe Captain Marvel makes a comment on how his beard looks bad, and he shaves it off as soon as she shows up.
It's possible.
That's how we know she's the most powerful Avenger.
She makes him feel self-conscious.
Yeah, the beautiful Chris Evans gets put down.
Well, I know we can't wait to talk about Endgame, but I think we should wrap up this discussion on Captain Marvel here. Jake, why don't you give your final thoughts?
Captain Marvel is a solid movie. I probably like Wonder Woman better as far as female superhero in the last couple years go. But it's a good movie. Does a lot of things right. It's certainly not perfect. I think it would have benefited from a bit more of an experienced director. There's certainly some writing flaws here and there. There's some directorial flaws here and there. Brie Larson might miss a line or two. But it's still, I'd say, right in the middle of the pack with Marvel, which is not a diss. Their lower tier movies are still decent. So their middle tier movies are good, and their higher tier movies are great. They still made another good quality movie to add to their resume. And I think it's very important in this day and age, in 2019, for these younger girls in this new generation come in and see this. I think that's very important. And I think it's, a powerful movie for all kinds of audience members. And I think it's another solid movie for Marvel. And it's a pretty solid transition into Endgame. Could have been better, but it certainly could have been worse.
Nate, final thoughts.
This definitely reminded me of the original couple of origin stories into the MCU. I wish this was stronger. It definitely has its good elements. It definitely builds on the Marvel world we've grown to love. But it definitely is not its brightest star. I wish that Captain Marvel's character was a little bit stronger, a little bit more defined. And I think that's mostly just because of how this movie is structured around the whole amnesia mystery. Who am I? What am I? Why am I here? That said, I think that she's going to be a good fit for Endgame. I'm excited for the character. I'm definitely not turned off by Brie Larson's performance. The other big pluses for me for this movie on its own is Samuel L. Jackson's work as a young Nick Fury. I think he's amazing. The rest of the supporting cast is all pretty good. I think my biggest complaint and my biggest takeaway is I wish they just were a little bit more creative with the fight scenes. They had shape-shifting Skrull for the first half of this movie before they turned out to be good guys. I wish they did a little bit more stuff with that. They always end up just being generic fistfight scenes at the end, which is kind of disappointing. Mm-hmm. But overall, solid entry, just middle of the road, lower tier Marvel, wooden seat.
We've gone over everything that I really need to. I don't want people deterred by what might sound like a more negative tone. We're just trying to be as balanced as possible. You know what I mean? There are major things about Captain Marvel that we obviously had issues with, but there are a lot of things that do work. I think by the end, I am excited to spend more time with Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers. And I think Brie Larson does everything she can with an inconsistent script to make the character compelling. It's the kind of thing where Thor is good in the original Thor, but as time went on, he became much more interesting and Hemsworth really grew into that role. I think the same thing is going to happen here. But this is a solid introduction. It's a pretty decent story, and for everything it had to do, it turns out just fine. And that's all we can really ask. That will do it for our review of Captain Marvel. Before we go, Mr. Nate Lungarini, where can they find us on the internet?
Alrighty, here's how you can get in touch with us. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Middle Seats. You can also listen to us on the go on SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, and iTunes. For any questions, comments, or updates on the show, keep an eye on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at The Middle Seats. And if you like what you hear and you want to see more content, let us know and spread the word.
We are bringing back our Freeze Frame spin-off show, of course, which takes a blast into the past about a movie that kind of has to do with an upcoming release. Our next review, we expect to be talking about Jordan Peele's Us, so we expect to be talking about Get Out on the next Freeze Frame. So keep your eye out for that. If you like this, please let all your friends know about it. Obviously, we're back and better than ever, and we're happy to spend another year of movies with you. That'll do it for us. For Jake Hensler and Nate Lungarini, I'm Andrew Auger. Keep that seat warm, everyone. We'll be back soon.